Session. Good morning, dear colleagues. Today I would like to tell you about one of the aspects of practical work of translators, and namely using additional information which is not contained in the text itself, which we have to translate and which can fasten your work or make it slower. So let's start with the most important. I'm not afraid to look cynical, but I would like to know that the main thing in the practical work of an interpreter or a translator is a good, decent compensation for the work done. And the compensation is material. And you can see the banknotes here. It's some kind of totem that are used on the slide. And the peculiarity of life and work of translator is that the only resource that he or she has is the time. And of course, there is also education, but education is something you have to obtain before you start working as a translator. Then there is health, which you have to preserve when working as a translator, and money is what you can obtain during the work itself. But as they say, time is money. Does any one of you know where this phrase comes from? And I used to think that it's something ancient, something of the folk wisdom, but then I found out that time is money is a citation from Benjamin Franklin, and maybe therefore he was put on the $100 bill about 200 years ago. In an article which was entitled Advice to the Young Tradesman, written by an old one, he wrote that it's necessary to remember that time is money, and all the time that was not spent on making money is practically the money lost. He's expanding on this, and he provides specific figures, and every one of you can put these figures here. And we know that there are editors at every translation conference, and they're happy to find a spelling error, if there is one. And especially for such competent friend of mine, I would like to show the quote from the authentic first edition, that the expense is written in such spelling, in the author spelling, so there is no misspelling here, and we can move on in full accordance to the maxim of Benjamin Franklin, that time is money, to the talk about the main topic of our presentation. So, as the author, another author said, another famous, the theory is dry and the tree is growing and flourishing. In theory, the work of translator is quite simple. He is doing the translation. In practical situation, when the translator is self-employed or a freelancer, he or she has to get some efforts to get an order and to deliver an order. And all of you know that the delivery of order is sometimes takes even more efforts than obtaining it. And the process of translation is quite linear. So if you try to find some illustration in the internet of the work of interpreters, As a rule, you will find that this is a person, well-groomed, quite healthy, sitting in front of a PC, and better a good lady, beautiful lady with good hair, dress, who is typing something on her PC. And the idea of such simplicity and linearity of the process found its reflection in the office folklore when the internal customer says to the translator, here you have the text, you have to retype it to Russian. And this is what happens in reality when you know the text well. So you know the topic, then you open the source, you start your favorite software on the PC, then you open several tabs on Facebook and Vkontakte, and you start to retype the source text to the target translation. But let's remember the phrase that I said, that the theory is dry. In practice, more often than not, you have two problems. First, you never quite understand what the author meant, and experienced translators are wary of what the customer expects. This can be anything, starting from actual mistakes and to real lies, and the expectations of customers of use of some special words when they tell you that your work is not good because you used the wrong word in the translation, and it's not the one that the CEO likes. So when you start translating as a profession, you have to make search in the internet, so you can look for additional information about what kind of device which you're translating, or what kind of phenomenon it is, if there are any other views on this phenomenon, what terminology is used by the professionals in this thematic field. There are lots of questions, and of course, the picture which you can see on the slide is quite simplified. There is no rigid division into the search of information and translation. It's quite striped one, as the life is. So you coped with one paragraph, you want to say that you are a good translator, and then in the next paragraph you encounter something that you have difficulties in understanding. This is the part of life of a translator, maybe a pleasant one, which allows you to always be aware, keep abreast of all the new things. And the translators, working as staff translators, this is pathological usually, because they are always searching for information, and the time of delivery of translation is postponed on a continuous basis. And usually, and this picture is meant for people who live in the real world, when they want to complete the job as quickly as possible, with providing good quality at that. And to make this process even faster, of course, you don't want to look for the information yourself, but to ask someone. So who can you ask? The customer, for example. Now I should say that when I was a translator, an editor, a manager, and then when I became a customer, I believe that the questions from translator not only natural, but it's a very important part of the job. A translator who believes that he is a know-all is a dangerous one. Even more dangerous can be the one who thinks that he knows even better than the author. I also met such translators. An experienced translator usually asks questions in hope that he will have to look for information less than before. And his search will be more targeted, and the translation will be faster, and the result will be better. As in any matter concerning human beings, you can be lucky. So let's discuss the situation. You receive an order. When I say you, I mean a wide circle of people, from independent translators to a whole staff, where there are professional and experienced managers and editors. And before you start translating or starting to work on translation, you have to look at it and find some potential problems. Some things that would require better understanding, some things that are incomprehensible, and then you draft the first translation for those paragraphs, and then you articulate your questions to the customer, and then you get the response. So this is good, and this is a reason to be happy about it, but sometimes the answer may be a gift. For example, they may forget, because it's only human to err, to send you a glossary, or maybe some good scheme that would show you globally the device you are translating about and its place in the production chain. Or maybe they send to you a separate letter, and then they decided to share previous letters. All these are gifts to the translator. They feel solid ground under feet, understands the context, and understands the expectations. You know the international joke, how many people do you need of a certain nationality, of a certain profession, to change the bulb? There are many variants, and in one of them you need extra people one person will be holding the bulb, and all the rest will be walking around and turning the table. And as far as translators are concerned, when translator is asked to change the bulb, he asks for the context. And sometimes the translator may get lucky, and they may receive what they wanted, what they need for the job, and then the job and delivery are completely different.
But it's not what always happens. What happens if you're not lucky? You ask a question to the customer. You didn't get reply at all, or reply was not what you expected. You searched for it. You put all your soul, all your mind, and all your work into it. And when you finished, you get reference materials at last. And it's not a gift anymore. It's a kind of bomb that will slow down your work. According to one of the examples, it can be translation of documents for program software. You can get, and that was a real case. You get documentation, reference or some manuals. You ask for interface translation. Maybe there is no interface translation, or maybe the translation is just simple. What do I mean by simple? Simple is popular. Is it bad or good? It's not the question. It's well known. I mean, the interface of such products as Windows or Google products should be discussed separately, but they exist and they well known. It's like traditional translation, like we that start button, for example. We know that it is start and it exists like that. But in this concrete case, it's when you finish working, you can get the list of reference for interface that differs significantly from what you put into your initial job. And instead of sending the order back, you need to remake it. As your responsible translator, you can see interface is different, or the positions are called in different way, or some geographical names are different, or some other information. Most often, it's about terminology on other language. It's complicated to imagine a situation when translator understood the source text in a very wrong way. At least translator carefully and without sharp ends translated correctly, but with target terminology, I mean interface elements, positions, names, surnames, especially if they are rare, it's almost impossible to guess. And these reference materials that you got only at the end of the work, and by the way, they will send to you without your participation. You might not know to ask for it at all. And in 1 month, you get some additional reference materials. You start remaking your translation, you waste your time for something that won't be paid. It's not pleasant, it's painful. You can tell it in the professional forum or your colleagues in different way, but it can happen. And the key question here is what to do. People aiming to share the knowledge, talking to the colleagues at the forums or visiting such conference as UTIC, expect to get advices that will solve their problems, but unfortunately here these kind of advices don't exist. What's good in one situation won't be unacceptable in another situation, because everything what we do for people, with people, and people are complicated, people are not predictable. That's why the main advice I can give you is just know about possible difficulties you can experience, or using allegory from transport industry to predict these unfavorable conditions that you might encounter in your trip. And it's better to agree all these details before starting working. In all the negotiations, all contacts with customers, and we mean direct clients, translation agencies, professional, non-professional customer of translation services, you need to limit rigidly the time when the conditions of orders are considered agreed. After that, your board is gone. You can't download more into your board from this moment. You can't paint it in different color. It will sail the way it is. And then it will be the responsibility of the team, of the chef d'équipe, manager, editor, translator, to bring it successfully to the other shore, or to final version of translated text in our case. Search translation solution of some issues will be in the responsibility of this team. And of course, help can be provided. But it should not change the route in critical way or character of text. There is such a term as freezing of condition, to let people work peacefully in predicted situation and to make the work as best as possible and in a rational period of time that will allow them to make this operation economical and profitable for them. But at the same time, you as professionals should understand some issues might happen after the work is done, and I would advise to include into your contract or to talk that there might be additional works, but these works will be additional. I want to point out the importance of the terminology. It's not the remake, it's not the polishing. Use the term that will show you add some value. It might be adaptation, or very often it will be polishing. We use the same term in Russian. We don't translate polishing into Russian. After translation is over, after normal work of translation team is over, and you understand that this translation reflects the meaning of the text, and B is made considering all the requirements that you know before you started working, special requirements of the customers, I mean. Of course, we can explain that that when your specialists see the translation, they would like to change something. That's normal. Of course, specialists can't foresee it beforehand. They're too busy for that. And the well-known practice is when you get translation, and I would like to point out one more time, it's quality, good translation. Specialists of the customers will adapt it to their concrete requirements. And our translation company, or you as private translator, are ready to do it. If after you send back translation, they need to adapt it to polish or to transform in some form, but the most important is to divide the responsibility of translator for the work he did. Having the materials at the beginning of the work, and those desires that customers have after translation is almost over. Just make it as additional work, just invoice them separately, and it's possible. Because if you foresee it beforehand, if you talk to customer in calm, professional way, he is ready to understand you. Because it's a rare case customers want to lie, humiliate, or to make a translator to work for free. Yes, maybe sometimes it happens, but I don't have these cases in my practice. All the misunderstanding in life happen due to the lack of understanding. But we are specialists who fight for the communication with people, and we need to know how to communicate with our own customers. And at the end of my short presentation, let's remember one more proverb: slow and steady wins the race, I mean. That's what Benjamin Franklin wrote in his work. He told that the way to wealth, and let's be honest, we can't talk about wealth in the job of translation, at least to normal life. Depends on two words: industry and frugality. I was surprised that this word is industry in English. Maybe it's some obsolete meaning. But industry can be used as a patience or attention to details. That's what we can wish to each other, and of course to wish not to waste time and money, to work with pleasure, to work with rational customers and those who are not rational, to behave them by communication waves. And thank you very much for your attention. Good luck in your work.